Yo, today is August 15th, 2023, and I wanted to look again at the GFS model runs for today. Um, so, in the previous few days, there have been models which show a strong hurricane developing and then heading towards Southern California, and we'll make sure it's the most current. So one thing is, um, yesterday I realized that once the 18Z is complete, it knocks off the 0Z. So um, I'm doing this while the 18Z is still loading. That way we can also look at the 0Z. So this is the most recent run, the 18Z. And you can see that it still has, in fact, this might even be the most direct landfall slash almost landfall. It kind of scrapes along the coast of Baja California here, and then this one actually legitimately just makes a landfall on Los Angeles, and I suppose San Diego and Southern California, and you can see that even in this run, even Northern California, San Francisco, and up here, Oregon, Washington, are affected by the tropical elements and remnants and moisture. You can see that, like, starting when it starts basically moving along the coast, it kicks up whatever is here, and you know, I'm uh, I'm noticing that you can see a lot of it just stream northwards. So, in other runs, you see a lot more going into Arizona, but in this run, a lot more of the moisture goes directly into Southern California and Nevada. And then, interestingly enough, you notice it kicks up and then like swings up into Canada and like very quickly is on the other side, or within a couple days is on the other side of the country, which I find interesting as well. Um, so let's just have to reload it every time. So let's watch this again. Just let it run through. You see that play out like that, and then you see another start to develop, and we'll actually look at that more in one of the other runs. You can also see some development of a hurricane off in the Atlantic, and this one. Additionally, also you see some of the remnants of this tropical system over Hawaii. So this run seems to be, thus far, it looks to me like the most direct impact, and it's also the newest run. Though we're still 5 days away from 5 or 6 days away from when this is supposed to happen, but we're getting closer, and the closer we get, and it's doing these models like this is the fourth day. I believe it was the 12th is when I made the first video on this, and then the 13th, and then the 14th, and then now is the 15th, and pretty much every run since I've done it has had something similar to this um, happening. And interestingly enough, I also haven't heard about this from any news people um, or weather people. This would be pretty incredible that a major hurricane kicks up and heads straight towards Los Angeles. Like this run, if it if it is a little more organized, like you can still kind of see some kind of eye. It's just really disorganized by the time it, like, the eye wall is broken up kind of and almost looks like it reforms. You know, in the least it's a tropical storm or a tropical depression or some, a real tropical system making a landfall uh, on Los Angeles and Southern California, San Diego. At the most, I mean, it's just a legitimate hurricane making a landfall on Los Angeles. And so I would think that would be really newsworthy. Um, but also within the past few months, I've literally posted a video where you can clearly see me triggering lightning strikes. So like, probably the weather stuff going crazy. It's like, I don't think people want to put too much impetus on that because it would probably lead to the things that I'm saying about this and have been saying for a while. Being more obviously looked at as closer to reality than what people want it to be. But yeah, so we'll let this play out a little more. Okay, so just want to show, look over here also in the Atlantic. You can see that this storm actually looks like it intensifies and gets pretty big, but it just gets carried off. But again, at this point, by this point in the model run, anything that's happening pretty much is like you can't trust it as much. But let's go down this list. And okay, actually, let's start at the bottom just so we can get this in for sure. So this is the 0Z from today. Um, and we'll run through it. As you can see, it develops, and this one does not make a direct landfall. It does do the thing where it moves along the coastline of Baja California. This one actually only barely touches, about this area, and then moves off into the Pacific a little more. However, even in a situation like this, you'll notice that a lot of the tropical moisture feeds north into, here it looks like several days of sustained tropical activity being carried into Southern California, Arizona, and Nevada around Las Vegas, right? So that would probably be more rain than they're used to around this time of year, to say the least, right? But additionally, you can see at the end of the run, another system seems to start to form up, and we'll look at that a little more. You can also see some activity um, that affects Texas and kind of the Gulf Coast states as well as Florida. It just depends on the run because by this point in the run, when you get to like the very end of it, it's 15 days away, and so the model doesn't as accurately portray what's going on. In fact, they generally call this like fantasy hours once you get this far into the run. Um, but anyway, okay, we'll look at the 6Z. Now, this one is a little more interesting. So it forms up. One of the things that I want to note also is since the 12th, all of these form up and do something pretty similar. It's just the exact path, but all of them have had a strong hurricane developing out of this, right? So I think that would be something to look at as if every run has had this develop, I think they give it a 90% chance, right? That's what I've seen on some of the um, where I could find coverage of this on the internet and on YouTube, and they seem to be giving it a 90% chance of developing at this point, or yesterday at least. Uh, but okay, so it develops into a strong hurricane, and this one is a little more like over the coast of Baja California here, and so you can see it moves across and also kind of goes out to sea, right? But then you see almost immediately at the end, so I'll just let it play all the way through. So here's the initial hurricane that develops, and again, it doesn't really affect, you know, you see moisture and tropical elements move up into California, Arizona, Nevada, but it doesn't really make a direct landfall on Southern California. But interestingly enough, at the end of this run, you'll notice another hurricane forms. Um, this one's not as big, but it does have some intensity for a moment at least, and this one has it like making, going almost a very similar path, a very similar trajectory, just along the coast of Baja California, almost straight into Los Angeles, right? And Southern California. So you probably would have more of this tropical, moisture and activity feeding up north. But yeah, we'll do here. Let me run it and not touch it, and then we'll go to the next. So you see a bunch of the air, I mean the moisture, go north, and then hey, another one develops and almost the same trajectory. So even kind of my point with this is like, not only does it look like one hurricane forms up, but I mean, it kind of my point has been like, I don't think this would be the end of it. This would just be like the first, I think, major hurricane to like legitimately affect. I mean, to like legitimately make a landfall on Southern California, Los Angeles. But um, and some weather person I'm sure is like, well, actually, in 1953 this happened or something. I just picked a random date, but you know, and okay, but in my lifetime at least, I can't think of any like major hurricanes. Or my parents are in there are pretty old. I don't think they can think of any hurricanes that have directly like spun up and then went straight for Los Angeles. But okay, let's look at the next run. Let alone that you would have like one form up and then within like a week another form up and make almost the same direct like run at Los Angeles, right? Okay, so this is the 12Z, and this one's a little closer actually to making a landfall. So you can see that they've kind of gone, the 0Z here, uh, as we look at it, more goes off into the Pacific, right? I mean, it kind of goes along the coast. And then the 6Z, right? It is a little closer to the coast, right? And then the 12Z, to me, I mean, it appears like makes a very similar run to the 6Z, maybe a little more uh, towards Los Angeles. And again, you can see another thing form up here and another looking to start to form up. I think this is the system that in the 6Z goes north into Baja California. This has it going west into the Pacific. And then, but you see almost immediately after that, this looks like another thing that would be forming up. Again, this is fantasy hours, but my whole point is that like it looks like multiple things. Um, Something going on in Los Angeles that would draw like the might make some kind of deity. I don't know, like Yahweh or someone angry or something. I don't know. Anyway, okay, so let's watch. This is the 18Z again. Um, and so like from the 0Z to the 18Z, the thing that I notice is like they get more, like each one steps closer to the, like has it going closer to the Baja California coast and has it making a more direct landfall on Los Angeles. So again, this is the most recent one. This is literally like it's still loading up. That's how recent it is. So let's let it run through. There's some additional stuff that we haven't seen yet because it hasn't finished loading. Um, but again, it looks like you can see another thing develop. Who knows? I mean, it almost looks like this was like these are the two pieces of like tropical energy that you see make two individual hurricanes, and it almost looks like here they start spinning around each other and then make one larger thing that I don't know, doesn't really organize. But again, this is kind of fantasy hours at this point in the model, so you can't really tell if something's actually happening or not. You're like, it's more just like, well, okay, well, this is, it might be representative of like the tropical moisture and energy that's out here, but it probably isn't representative of the exact path something's going to take, if even representative of anything that matches reality. But it almost looks like another thing is like tropical stuff like moves up. Like this looks like it wants to spin and then it moves up into the east coast there. But yeah, so I guess we'll watch one more run, and yeah. Okay, well, I don't really have much more to add. You can look at what's going on in the Eastern Pacific. It's not really the topic of this video, but um, yeah. So anyway, I just thought it would be. We got another, yeah, 91. Um, and you can see that a lot of, well, different like energy, tropical systems and energy are coming off the Atlantic. One thing, this development area here, uh, I believe that around the 20th, I saw something where it seems to someone was seemingly indicating like around this point, and maybe that's even why this is able to develop here, that the Saharan dust is like which normally kind of nullifies activity over here, that the Saharan dust starts to um, fade away. I mean, it stops moving over the Atlantic, and like you have a break in all the Saharan dust, which is just basically breaking up the storm activity here. And so like about the 20th is that this is the point where you're gonna start seeing stuff, and like you can see about the 20th is when this thing forms up and really like becomes starts to become a hurricane, and it just strengthens and strengthens. And I mean, I guess if it does this island here is directly in the path. But again, this is really late on in the run, so whether that's actually what happens or not, who knows. Let's watch this one more time. Um, let's watch the 18Z one more time as it shows this system moving over Los Angeles. And again, by this point, it's pretty like it's breaking up pretty significantly, but you can still see like that's. I think this is the eye wall. It's just wonky and um, really like disorganized after it. Really, I think this line here almost or something like at a certain point the water temperature changes as it moves up the coast, and it gets a lot colder and it's a lot harder to sustain. Like the water temperature, I think, helps energize the systems. So the fact that the water is a lot colder, moving north here, is I think part of what breaks it up in the way that you see it break up. But it's still big enough prior to hitting the water there, and it's organized enough that it's able to maintain some of its energy. And you can even see that, like, notice that it's not as like it's a lot more organized right here, and then once it gets up here it really starts to break up. We'll see what happens, because at this point it seems pretty undeniable that like there is a massively high probability that this plays out, that a major hurricane develops off the west coast of Mexico and then moves north towards Southern California. Whether what happens in between, how strong exactly it gets, all these other variables are subject to change. But like just in the most basic in its most basic form, this is only 3 days away, right here. Like this specific, like it looking like this. So we'll know. I guess this is technically supposed to form. It looks like a hurricane to me, right? I mean, it kind of looks like it here, but right here and here is when it really looks like, okay, that is, you know, like this is a hurricane at this point. So like with a defined eye wall. So we'll see what happens. I don't really have anything else to add. I mean, I could voice all sorts of stuff about like what I think is, this, that, or the other, but not in this video. So I hope you enjoyed this. Have a blessed one. Later. Yeah.